The lawyer's voice was too calm for what he was telling me. "Mr. Whitfield, someone has filed papers to have you declared incompetent." I set my coffee down slowly. Outside, sprinklers ticked across my lawn, like nothing in the world was wrong. "Who filed them?" I asked. There was a pause on the line, the kind of pause that already tells you the answer before it comes. "Your son, Derek." "My name is Walter Reyes. I'm 68 years old. I spent 34 years running a mid-sized freight logistics company out of Sacramento, the kind of business nobody notices until their packages stop arriving. I built it from a single truck and a phone line in my garage into something worth real money. And apparently, that money was now the reason my own son wanted a judge to declare me unfit to manage my own life. I didn't shout. I didn't drive to his house. I thanked the lawyer, hung up the phone, and sat in my kitchen for a long time listening to the refrigerator hum. Somewhere in that silence, I stopped being a father waiting to be hurt again, and started being a man who builds contingency plans for a living. Derek had made a mistake. He just didn't know it yet. My wife Carol died 11 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 18 months from diagnosis to the funeral. After that, it was just me and the business, and Derek, who was 29 at the time, and had never held a job longer than a year. I gave him one anyway. Operations coordinator. $41,000 a year to start, a title that sounded better than the work actually was, and I told myself I was doing right by my son. For a decade I covered for him. Missed shipments, blown budgets, a warehouse fire in 2019 that investigators quietly attributed to Derek, ignoring 3 separate maintenance notices on a forklift charging station. I paid the insurance deductible myself, rather than let it touch the company's rating. I never told him I knew it was his fault. I told myself that's what fathers do. He married Priya in 2016. She was sharp, genuinely sharp, an actuary before she left the workforce, and for a while I thought she'd be good for him, steady him out. Instead, I watched something else happen. Derek stopped asking me for help with problems and started asking me questions that weren't really questions. How much was the company worth now? Whether I'd updated my will since Carol died, whether I'd ever considered simplifying things before I got older. I gave him the benefit of the doubt for years, because that's easy to do with your own son. I told myself concern for my finances was love wearing an awkward coat. I sent him and Priya on a paid trip to Cabo for their 5th anniversary. I put both their names on a joint account for emergencies that I funded but never touched. I thought I was building a bridge. I didn't understand, not yet, that I was handing someone the blueprints to my own house. It started with a bank statement I wasn't supposed to see. In March, I asked my accountant, Louise Tran, to pull 3 years of statements from the joint emergency account for a routine review. Nothing suspicious, just an old man being tidy with his books. What came back had 11 withdrawals I didn't recognize. Amounts between $2,400 and $9,800, spread across 14 months, totaling $61,300, each one timed 2 or 3 days after I'd made a deposit. I didn't say anything to Louise about what I suspected. I just asked her, casually, to also pull the account's login history. It showed access from an IP address registered to a house in Elk Grove, Derek and Priya's address, at hours when I was asleep 3 towns over. I want to be honest about something. My first feeling wasn't rage. It was almost relief in a strange way, the relief of finally having a shape for something I'd only felt as a shadow for 2 years. And I know how that sounds. But suspicion without proof eats at you slower than proof does. Proof, at least, you can hold in your hands and decide what to do with. The withdrawals traced to a property management LLC Derek had registered in Nevada 8 months earlier. Registered address, a UPS mailbox in Reno. Listed officer, Derek Reyes. I sat with that for 3 days before I told a single living soul. I didn't confront him. I didn't change the locks. I didn't even mention the trip to Cabo again. What I did was start showing up to family dinners a little more forgetful than I actually was. I'd ask the same question twice. I'd misplace my reading glasses and make a small show of hunting for them. Derek noticed. Priya noticed faster. 3 weeks into this, at a Sunday dinner, Derek asked me, gently, the way you'd ask a child if they remembered where they put their shoes, whether I'd thought about getting some paperwork in order, just in case. I told him I'd think about it. He smiled at Priya across the table in a way he thought I didn't catch. That was the moment he handed me the evidence I actually needed. 2 days later, Priya texted me a link to a simple power of attorney form, already filled out with my name, saying it was just something to have ready. I didn't sign it, I photographed it, time-stamped, saved to 3 separate drives, and forwarded it to my attorney, a woman named Renata Cole, who had handled my company's contracts for 2 decades and had absolutely no patience for people who target the elderly for sport. Renata read it and said one sentence I still remember. "Walter, this isn't concern, this is a setup." I told her I already knew. Renata and I spent the next month doing something Derek never imagined I was capable of. We built a paper trail longer than his. I had Louise formally audit the joint account and produce a certified forensic report tracing all $61,300 to the Nevada LLC. Renata subpoenaed the LLC's bank records through a civil discovery request tied to a breach of fiduciary duty claim we quietly filed before Derek's competency petition ever reached a judge. We found more. The LLC had taken out a $40,000 line of credit using my company's name as a listed reference, without my knowledge, without my signature, forged from an old loan application Derek had access to as operations coordinator. That wasn't just theft from me anymore. That was fraud against a bank and fraud against my company, both of which carry consequences a family dinner can't smooth over. Renata filed a competency evaluation request of her own, not against me, but requesting the court order a full financial forensic review of anyone petitioning to control my estate. It's a standard countermeasure most people don't know exists. Judges take conflicts of interest seriously when the person asking to control your money has already been quietly draining it. All the while, Derek kept moving forward like a man who'd already won. He scheduled his competency hearing filing for the following month. He told Priya, in a phone call I only learned about later, that the old man won't even know what hit him. He wasn't wrong about the hitting part. He was wrong about which one of us was going to feel it. The first door closed quietly. Renata's countersuit for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud was filed 2 weeks before Derek's competency petition was scheduled to be heard, which meant when his petition reached the judge's desk, it arrived sitting next to a certified forensic report showing his own theft. Judges do not look kindly on a petitioner who is simultaneously the subject of a fraud investigation involving the same money they're petitioning to control. The second door closed through the bank. Once the forged loan reference surfaced in discovery, the bank's fraud department opened its own internal review, independent of anything Renata and I had filed. Banks move fast when their own paperwork has been forged. Derek's LLC line of credit was frozen within 9 days. There was one night I almost lost my nerve. Priya called me, crying, saying Derek was drinking more than usual, and she was scared of what he might do if he found out how much we knew before the hearing. I sat in my kitchen with the phone in my hand for a long time. I told her the truth, that I hadn't set out to destroy her marriage, only to stop being robbed by my own son. She didn't say much after that. I don't know, even now, whether she believed me. But she also didn't warn him. I think by then she'd started building her own exit. The third door, the one that actually mattered, closed in a conference room on the 4th floor of the county courthouse annex, 3 days before the competency hearing was set to begin. Renata arranged it as a settlement conference, which is a phrase that sounds boring enough that Derek walked in without his lawyer fully prepared for what was in the room. I sat at the far end of the table. Renata sat beside me with a folder 3 inches thick. Louise joined by video call to speak to the forensic numbers directly if needed. Derek started talking before he'd even sat down, something about how this whole thing was a misunderstanding, and how he only wanted what was fair, eventually, someday. I let him finish. I've learned that the calmest thing you can do to a person who expects a fight is simply wait them out. Derek, I said, I know about the LLC in Reno. I know about the 11 withdrawals. I know about the loan application with my forged signature. I know Priya sent me a power of attorney form filled out with my name before I'd agreed to sign anything. His face did something I hadn't seen since he was 9 years old and got caught taking $20 from my wallet. He looked at his lawyer looked at the folder. Renata slid it across the table without a word. That's not. I can explain the LLC, he said. That was going to be for you, for your care. $61,000 for my care, moved to an account you never told me existed, right before you filed to have me declared unable to manage my own money. I kept my voice level. You didn't build a plan to help me, Derek. You built a plan to replace me. He tried 3 more angles in the next 10 minutes, that Priya had handled the paperwork, that the loan reference was an accident, that his lawyer had told him competency filings were routine, just to protect the family. Renata answered each one with a page number. By the fourth objection, his own attorney asked for a private word with him in the hallway. He withdrew the competency petition that afternoon, in writing, with prejudice, meaning he can't refile it. That was step 1. Step 2 came from the bank 3 weeks later. Formal fraud charges referred to the district attorney's office over the forged loan reference, carrying, under state law, a potential sentence of up to 4 years. Derek pled to a lesser charge in exchange for full restitution. The $61,300 repaid with interest, plus $9,400 in legal fees from my side that the settlement required him to cover. He lost his job the following month. Not from me. I didn't call anyone. A former colleague of his, hearing about the fraud charge through the small, gossiping world that logistics companies apparently share, mentioned it to his current employer. Some things don't need help spreading. Priya filed for divorce 2 months after the settlement conference. I don't know everything that happened in their house during that stretch, and it isn't mine to know. What I do know is she called me once, afterward, just to say she was sorry for the power of attorney form, and that she hoped I understood she'd been trying to survive something too. I told her I did. My company's board, once they learned the full story through the fraud referral, which becomes public record, asked me quietly whether I wanted to press further, pursue Derek criminally beyond the plea deal, take everything from him the way he'd tried to take everything from me. I said no. Restitution and consequence were enough. I didn't need ruin. I needed the truth on the record and my name off his forms. I sold the company 18 months ago to a management group that kept every warehouse employee and gave me a seat on the advisory board I actually enjoy showing up to. I spend more time now than I ever did when Carol was alive, which feels like both a gift and a debt I'm slowly paying off to her memory. Derek and I don't speak often. He sends a card at Christmas. Last year it just said, "Thinking of you, Dad," no return address, no explanation, and I didn't write back, but I didn't throw it away either. I've stopped needing him to understand what he did in order for me to move forward. That was the last thing he took from me that I had to take back myself. I think about that conference room sometimes, not with anger anymore, just with a kind of clarity. He thought slowness meant weakness. He thought because I didn't yell, I hadn't noticed. People like Derek mistake patience for permission, right up until the moment the patience runs out and the paperwork is already filed. If there's one thing I'd want anyone watching this to take with them, it's this. Love your children, but don't confuse loving them with handing them the keys to your undoing. Kindness is not the same as blindness, and the people who count on you never seeing them clearly are usually the ones you need to look at hardest. If this story meant something to you, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and subscribe if you want more stories about the quiet ones who turn out to be the most dangerous person in the room. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons or events is coincidental.